I'm live now anyway.
Of course, we've got snow here at the moment.
Good morning. This is Talking Devils, the leading independent Manchester United podcast. A much better introduction. We've got snow at the moment. We should have that in the start of every podcast. I'm your host, Barton, joined by Manchester United legend Paul Parker to talk over the last few weeks at Manchester United. If you're watching live on YouTube, if you can subscribe and get your comments in and like the video. If you're watching the replay, say hello, comment. We do reply. If you're watching live on Twitter now, a few of you are, feel free to get your comments in. They're coming up on the feed these days, so I'm able to get you in the conversation. If you're listening back on the audio podcast, if you can subscribe and leave a positive review if you can on the platform you're listening on. Paul, it's been a few weeks, topsy-turvy time for Manchester United, but did you have a more settled Christmas period?
Well, to be honest, really, there could have been days and days of thunderstorms. It would have been better than what it's been for Manchester United, but no, it's fine. Yeah, still kind of work, still with quite a bit of football, but it was the only bit of football that was missing, Wayne, really.
Yeah, we took a little bit of a break. Did you find out if you're on Santa's good list or his naughty list?
I just found out that I'm getting older, so your presents seem to cut down when you get older.
Yeah.
Vouchers are key now, aren't they?
Well, I'm entering my era of warm socks and also being grateful for warm socks, which yeah, it's what it is. No Dave with us today. Hopefully we'll be back next week. Thinking of you, Davo. Morning, John. Hope you're well. He says, morning, Wayne. Morning, Paul. Yeah, 50 of you watching now, which is good because we don't normally get the live numbers on here. But if you are watching through Twitter, if you can leave a comment under it, I'll try and get you in a conversation. Yes, I did say, Paul, rather than talk about the individual games, we'll talk about Eric Ten Hag and his position at the moment. Sort of like a wider conversation about him, really. And we've had the takeover, and you might even say that the strategic review has saved him in a way, or at least taken some of the attention away, because the pressure, not from the press, obviously, because the pressure was there, it was so great. But I think a few of us who understood the club's financial position a little bit greater than that is that when things were held in the strategic review, that it wouldn't have made much sense to be dispensing with a manager that when he was going to cost £15 million at least to relieve him of his contract and his assistants and his team around him, and then obviously the cost of acquiring a new manager. It wasn't something that the club had really accounted for, especially when you look at the money that they were scrabbling around to get Amrabat in the summer. But they persevered with the manager. There's a lot of clarity there. We'll talk about Ratcliffe in a little while, but with Ten Hag, as far as he's concerned, look, I mean, you and I, Paul, are always people who will defend the manager. Generally, I mean, depending on who it is, obviously Jose Mourinho was a different kettle of fish, but Ole, we sort of defended him right to the end. We could see there was a point of no return in there. Don't get me wrong. I think we both knew that game was the Liverpool game. We lost 5-0, but we persevered. It's difficult to know if we've reached that moment with Ten Hag. I mean, I will admit that, and we've had this conversation before on the podcast, that when we were 3-0 down to Bournemouth and they scored the goal and it was disallowed, really a flag, because I was thinking you don't survive losing 4-0 at home to Bournemouth. Like, you can't do that. Manchester United can't do that. But 3-0 apparently you can. And he did. 3-0 and 4-0, they are quite significant in the difference. But the point is, Paul, that credit from winning that League Cup back in February and getting to the Champions League as he did, and imposing an identity on the side, which he did, and we have still seen that at some points this season, but obviously a lot of it has disintegrated. We've now reached a point in the season where all of that credit seems to have gone. Even, I would say that, we don't expect to win a trophy. We'll be talking about the FA Cup on this podcast. We don't expect Champions League qualification either, really. I don't, as a supporter. But what I am invested in is identity. It wasn't so long ago on this podcast where you and Dave were making the point where Ten Hag might have walked because he didn't feel like he was being supported enough, and now he doesn't feel like he's got that kind of leverage in there. What do you make of Ten Hag's position, and what do you think now looks for the rest of the season like a successful season for United and for most pointedly for Ten Hag?
Well, I still want him to be given a proper chance. Like, well, I don't think any manager's really had a good go at this job. I should say the job of managing Manchester United, because there's been too many hurdles in front of them, and you manage to jump over a few, and then all of a sudden, as you think you've cleared it, you're looking for the hurdles to get smaller and smaller. They virtually become the hurdles like you see at Cheltenham every February, March. They get just bigger and bigger and more dangerous. I think Ten Hag is in that position at this moment in time. There's still no guarantee, even with what's gone on off the field, that he's going to be able to get to where he wants. Because I think we have to still look at that. Doing anything in January is out the window. that is, we get all the names all thrown up, but you have to say is that not a lot's going to happen. You look at it, there's more talk about who's leaving, and it's not about them as a player. It's about how much they're earning, which isn't a good sign really at all, if that's what it's going to be about. But he has done a few things which has alienated a lot of supporters. I think if it had been any other manager that had done what he's done, they'd be calling for him strongly. I think there's obviously a small few, but they're not understanding the reasons why it doesn't make sense to get rid of him. And that's what it boils down to. It does not make sense to get rid of him because there's no one out there to get him. You talked about the financial side of it. There is no one out there who can improve it at this moment in time. Yes, they mostly get that initial burst, which you see all the time, which in theory we should all laugh at as football people, as football fans, because everyone knows it's coming in a certain way of a new manager. And that's the moment then you should actually question the players. But they don't get questioned. If they do, people suddenly get told off they can't do it. And there seems to be this when the steel around players of today, really, when you can't have a go at them because you're affecting their confidence and their mental health and that. When as far as I look at it, you're doing the job. You want to do it. You're supposed to love it. Go out there and go and show everybody how much you love it. And that's all that needs to be done with Manchester United at this moment in time. Is players to show how much they love playing football and more importantly, love playing for that football club because they should actually be adoring that moment of wearing that jersey in every single game. So Ten Hag now, as far as I'm concerned, has to be able to do this job until the end of the season. He should be allowed a proper go in the window. But again, we're talking finances. What's going to happen financially? Because as much as, and maybe I'm going to this too early, but as much as the new person is coming in, there isn't a great deal of money there for him to work with. It is about, sorting out, getting rid of the players who shouldn't be there. But the problem is, I think for Ten Hag to do anything, he's going to have to maybe look at what certain players are earning and then see what he can recoup back, I should say, from what they're earning to be able to use to bring in players. And players are not going to walk away because they know that they're not going to get anywhere near what they're getting now at another club.
Yeah, that's a lot of tough wiggle room in there for United. Patrick says, Happy New Year. We were just having a conversation before, Patrick. I'm really sorry about this, but it's 8th of January and the cut-off, I think, is 7th. You've got a week statute of limitations. I don't know. I'm wishing you a Happy New Year as well. I'm only joking. We keep wishing everyone Happy New Year until the cows come home, whenever that is. But you make a good point there about the United's position or Ten Hag's position in terms of what he can and can't do in January. I think a lot of it is I can't pretend that I'm an expert on it, but there's obviously some well, a lot of implications with FFP. I think United in this window would be very reluctant indeed to try and push any buttons with it with that, considering the outstanding case with City and the severity of the punishment that went to Everton. United's issues are compounded by the outstanding fees on players like Casemiro and Anthony, and you would, the debt that's attached to the club becomes a inconsequential issue really, but the transfer debt does impact on what the club are able to do in the transfer scenario. I mean, they terminated the loan of Reguilon, which made a lot of sense because I mean it's just part of this process of investing in players who really brought very little to the club. And, there's nothing now in hindsight, now he's gone back, that made me think that it wasn't worth giving Fernandez a chance. I know a lot of people came at me with this, saying, oh, Fernandez was lightweight at Preston, but I would have rather given him the 5 or 6 games which Reguilon ended up with, just to see, if he was out of his depth, because there's a lad with talent there. And what we saw with Reguilon was he was all right going forward. He wasn't particularly brilliant. We don't, we're looking at a lower level Alex Telles, and that tells you that we're in a struggle.
Just quickly, Wayne, just a few words. Lightweight at Preston is completely different to playing in the top division.
Yeah, I know that. I know what you're saying, because there's being accused of not being able to handle rough and tough challenges in the Championship is a completely different kind of thing. First of all, there's less contact allowed as you go up the divisions, and the camera scrutiny and replays becomes more severe the more that you go up the divisions. But I'm with you with that. I'm completely with you with that. He could be fairly robust at Preston and then turn out to be a world beater at United because of like a slight increase in quality around him, but also that attention on physical contact and everything like that. I would have much rather him been given that sort of, like, I don't know how many games it was in the end, but 6 to 10 games that Reguilon got, because we all saw that he was out of his depth. We were all asking the same questions, and you're asking questions then of motivation for these younger players. And we've seen how good Cobby's come in and he's done well. We've seen how good even Dangor in his limited appearances, Garnacho obviously now finding his feet. Obviously he's inconsistent, but there's so much quality in there that you want to see it persevered with. That's where we are. I mean, in terms of transfers, because the thing is still being ratified as well by the board, by the Premier League, the investment, it's not likely that we will see any capital injection from Ratcliffe, and he's unable to do that. So there's a lot of sort of moving pieces. Then we've got the other question of whether or not we trigger the option on Amrabat's loan. But I mean, that's a question for the end of the season, thank heavens, because I don't think anyone will be answering that one in the affirmative in the short term. And again, it's asking the question of what we gain by keeping him around. And what we lose in that motivation for the younger players, because it's thankfully not proven to be a roadblock for Mainu, but he's just filling squad space then, isn't he, if he's not doing the role that Mainu's there for. But that's another thing, Paul, isn't it? It's a big 5 months for these players now. I mean, I think the one thing that most of us want to see, and this just does go cap in hand with the manager in a way, that we've got a likelihood of it being one game a week for the rest of the season. We don't want to see players who have been around the squad, who we know that aren't going to have a long-term future at the squad. We don't want to see these players in the squad anymore, because it's going to send the wrong message. Like everyone was frustrated when Martial played against Bournemouth, because it was kind of like, why are we back here again? And it's more a case of now thinking the manager's not learning his lessons. So what do you want to see in terms of squad composition for the rest of the season?
I just want to see what you're saying now. I just want to see players who want to play, want to be there to prove a point. Players who are trying to earn the right to get in the team regularly. That's what I'd like to see between now and the end of the season. I personally don't want to see Martial start another game. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, there's talk of him going, but is he going to go now or is he going to wait to the end of the season? I personally don't want to see Scott McTominay playing because I just don't see where it's going. It keeps going. It's just keep going back again and trying to reignite it. And I just think in a certain way, Ten Hag has got to stop doing that. He really has to stop doing that because it just isn't going to work. Because the club's going to go. The club's going to go forward.
Can I just jump in on that point because it's an excellent point? McTominay and Maguire were two players who we talked about in the summer as moving on. In an absurd way, because of the injury crisis, those two players really their stock's higher now than what it was in the summer. This should be the opportune time to look to move them on, right? This should be that opportune time, right? But now we're talking about them like other people aren't talking about them in terms of transfer rumors. We are talking; they're like being talked about in terms of being around for the rest of the season. But this does seem like the moment, doesn't it, to sort of like say, all right, you've done well in this 3 or 4 month period, better than what we hoped, but we can still see the limitations. We still see it's time for you to move on. This is a good time for United to cash in on those kind of assets.
Oh, I mean, yeah, what you're saying, you are right. Harry Maguire suddenly getting this injury, I don't know where it was come from. It's kind of all of a sudden everyone's trying to talk about him being missed. He gets that player of the month, and a lot of people have asked that question where that one suddenly come from. So he's lifted himself, but with those two players, you don't step forward as Manchester United. You really, really don't step forward. And when those two players were being mentioned for West Ham, there was a lot of West Ham fans who were kind of, they weren't really interested. They certainly weren't interested in Scott McTominay because they said they've got enough problems with Sojek, let alone Scott McTominay now. And we've seen that Scott has come in. Yes, the 2 goals against Brentford, that's him just getting on the end of things, just running forward and getting on the end of things. But when he was brought on the sub against Nottingham Forest, then it was like going back in time and seeing when Manchester United were trying to get him to be that kind of last man in midfield, that central, that midfield player who sit a little bit deeper and hold a bit.
Yeah.
He hasn't got that. It's something that I think in certain ways you're born with. You can coach in football, but you still need natural ability. And we've seen that already. That in certain ways, Scott is manufactured in a certain way to play in a certain style, and it isn't to hold and be patient, to see things, to sense. He hasn't got that in his makeup. His makeup is he sees the ball going forward. His idea then is to run and get into the box and cause mayhem. And that is his ultimate strength, and that's what Scotland do. Scotland have sussed it. I should say Steve Clarke has sussed it a lot quicker than other Manchester United managers knowing the player's strength.
Yeah.
And that's what he's gone and done. Harry Maguire is one that knows how to get around situations to cover up his weaknesses. And United, in my opinion, when again another player they paid far too much for. If it was 50% of the price in which he at the most should have been, then maybe it might be different. But him coming at that price straight away just put everyone just went, whoop, wow. And even then when he has played, he's a liability because Manchester United have to sit deep. Everything's slow from the back. The game against Nottingham Forest, I was watching Varane and I'm looking at the goalkeeper and Anna is the goalkeeping version of Harry Maguire. Everything is dead slow. When he goes to his feet, he's great playing from the back. Playing at 2 miles an hour, we could actually go and get Beckenbauer to go and play now. He could go and do it he could go and do it now. It'd be that easy for him to go and do it. But he's so slow. And I saw Varane doing that with his arms. He wanted to try and get a tempo going, which is Manchester United's way of playing football, to play at top sides play at high tempo when they get the ball. He wasn't doing that, the goalkeeper. That's Harry Maguire from the back. So that's 2 players where you said at the start of this conversation that they have actually now put themselves in a position of being worth something now.
Yeah.
And I just think you've got to go and take it. Can it be a little bit more than what it was before? Hopefully. Does it still mean losing something? Well, yes, because you're never going to get back for Harry Maguire what you paid for him.
Yeah.
But he's not. But the problem is, he's not going to walk away because he's not going to feel. He's going to feel humiliated if he just walks away, a little bit cap in hand to try and reignite his club career. And if he wants to carry on playing for his country, I think he's going to need regular football somewhere where he's going to be loved because there actually is a better left-sided defender in the Premier League than him who's English. But while that player is playing for a club and not a top club, and it's going to be difficult for him to get past what Gareth Southgate is seeing is loyalty with a player where loyalty and sentiment could affect him badly in his next tournament.
Yeah, it's many moving pieces, really, especially, like I said, an international tournament moving up and international chances. Good few comments coming in here. John says, Ten Hag is a tricky one. I would say the Bournemouth loss worried me, and of course, compounded by the Forest defeat. It does feel like the end of '89 under Fergie. I just hope he can have a happy ending like that. He doesn't have much hope. If that equivalent is right, then that means Paul Parker will be signing for us in 18 months. Get the boots back out. Reese, good morning, mate. Hope you're doing well. Long time. Johnny Crowther says Morgan Gibbs White in the pre-match huddle versus United said they don't want to be here. Sums up our club. No, do you know what? Maybe, but I mean, we give other teams too much credit. I think sometimes like Forest weren't good against us. Like West Ham, until they scored, they weren't good against us. Like they were emboldened by the fact that we were flat. They were expecting us to be a lot more spirited than what we were, considering the results we had going into those games. And that's what the massive disappointment was that we were so flat that Ten Hag changed the system slightly in both of those games, in both of the away games. Like we should have played two holding midfielders at West Ham. We should have probably done the same. Helped Manu out against Forest. I know it was impacted by the Hoyland injury, but I don't want to go over the individual results here. But that I agree. Like in terms of like there are bad things at some of the club up at the moment in terms of the performances, but it's not the. One of the biggest things is that opponents aren't having to play particularly well to beat us. Bournemouth didn't have to play well to beat us by 3 at Old Trafford. Bournemouth didn't have to play particularly well to win by 3 goals at Old Trafford. These are the alarm bells that should be ringing. And they might be ringing with the manager. They might be ringing with other people around the club. They certainly are. Are they ringing enough with the players? No, they can't be because there are standards to which you don't plummet if you're a Manchester United player, because you should, like every Manchester United player has got talent, even the ones with debatable ones that we talked about, Maguire and McTominay, where they fit in. They've been brought to Old Trafford because they've got talent. Obviously, you've seen disparity in results over this last month in particular, but this last month is a microcosm of the last 10 years. This last month I'm talking about, not January, because obviously we haven't even played in 2024 yet. Still unbeaten, which is you know me, always an optimist. But over the last 6 weeks, you've seen a microcosm of United over the last 10 years, where the results where we've been beaten and beaten heavily are a result of attitude. They're a result of attitude, and like Johnny says here, that's my point. We're no fight yet. That's the thing that we've seen, because capability is there, but the legs don't seem to be. Patrick says, agree with Mr. Parker. Mr. Parker, there you go. We have to start formalising the way that I talk to Paul, like he's my pal. Mr. Parker, which is fair enough, by the way. Keeping and starting Maguire and McTominay is harming Erik ten Hag. Whatever their form this season looks like, it takes us 3 steps backwards. Yeah, I mean, period, we can understand why they were brought into the side because of injuries. You hope for a better plan B, that there's something being made there in the background, and there hasn't been, which is a concern. with the players coming in back from injury, I'm talking about Casemiro and Martinez. I don't want to be saying, oh, these are light new signings. You hope that something from last season, the good part of last season, like January, February, that we see a lot of that back in the side over the next 4 or 5 months. And there's time to do it. There's time to do it because all of these players are coming back. Time to find different answers to the same old questions. That's the question that Ten Hag has got to face. A different person in Old Trafford. We'll talk about Jim Ratcliffe for a little moment, Paul. It was confirmed on Christmas Eve that his 25% share holding in United is being it's been accepted by the club. It's been ratified by the Premier League, as I said earlier. It shouldn't seem to be too much of an issue, considering that it looks to meet all the standards of the Premier League. It shouldn't seem to be too complicated. United do then appear to have some kind of clarity, some kind of direction. There's a $200 million investment, another $100 million guaranteed before the end of the calendar year. Over the next few months, you would imagine there's some form of communication as to the direction of that investment. It doesn't seem connected to transfers or FFP, but the club's operations as a whole, it should help with FFP. Everyone should be happy by the fact that there's outside investment coming in. It's something that the club haven't seen for nearly a century. A new partial owner coming in and investing sizable chunks of money into the club. This is generally good news. It also brings to an end this period of 13 or 14 months of instability since they launched the strategic review. Better communication with supporters from the off, better communication with staff. They were on the ground, Old Trafford. Jim Ratcliffe 71, so you would imagine everything associated with this is going to be a vanity project. He wants to be seen as he's not even full owner of the club. He knows that if that does happen, it's going to be another 18 months, by which time he'll be nearly 73. 2 years of life at any period of time isn't something you can take for granted. So he's going to be wanting to, in the years that he's got left, be seen as the person who restored United to their former glories, which, nobody likes getting old, but for Manchester United supporters, that does bring some kind of optimism over what we should perceive he wants to do over the next 5 or 6 years. Paul, is there, do you see, are you quite happy with what you've seen here? I mean, obviously, it's been a long drawn out process. It's not quite the clean cut of, outside investment coming in, like in the form of the Qatari takeover. But this is what Manchester United have got. He's a United fan. He understands the club. That's different to running it. It's different to making the difficult decisions that come within it. And obviously, there's no guarantee that any of those decisions will be right. But do you feel optimistic by the recent news at the club?
Not really, to be perfectly honest, Wayne. It doesn't grab me. I mean, I suppose everyone's thinking it's just going to happen. He's going to be throwing money in and doing everything that goes with it. But it's not going to work out that way. I don't think it's I still don't think he's putting 25%. They've never allowed. Well, not because they're never allowed. People have never been able to stop them doing whatever they wanted, really. And having 25% doesn't allow him to really stop anything. Is it actually isolated to the fact of that they can't get involved in anything sporting regarding Manchester United? I still think not, because there's still the people who are going to come into the club, players, I mean, and they're going to want a say in that, or maybe financially something from it. People going out. There's still a lot of things, and I think there's a vast majority of fans who just really want 100% sell. It doesn't, yes, you can mention his name, but there's still a great big sign above his name.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, and that is the ongoing problem. That is still going to be a problem to maybe going out and getting the big players, the ones who are going to Not because financially it's going to be hard to get him, but it's going to be convincing their agents or whoever's looking after him that the club's in a good is in a good position now. There's not going to be any of the issues that have been going on for over 10 years. All that's gone now. It's a new era. That's what you want to say to someone who's going to sign for the club, but you can't because there's only virtually a business manager at the moment, and that business manager is Radcliffe. He's just the business manager. He's still got the name above him, which doesn't hold well or bode well, I should say, with any Manchester United fan. That's the problem. So I still don't. I still see, as the saying goes, troubles ahead. To be perfectly honest,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm willing to eat humble pie. I'm willing to do everything if I'm wrong, anything if I'm wrong. But just to see Manchester United compete again is an absolute bonus without
Yeah.
winning the trophy, because that will take you forwards. You've got something to go with then. In today's football, things are changing a lot quicker than what they were during my time. You're not going to be able to go and do anything in that way during my time. Well, you can if you keep throwing loads and loads of money at it and cut corners, you can do it, as we see. But to go and do it by the book, it's very, very difficult. And I want United to be given that chance and to be able to compete. But I think that's the best. I think that's the best it's going to be is being able to compete.
Yeah.
The best I believe that United can get to Wayne, but I'm not sure if they can in the situation they're going to go into. And there'll be a lot of new age Manchester United fans who never knew or not really interested in what United were about in the 90s and the early 2000s. They're not only bothered about now, and they're willing to accept anything, and they will see this as being great. There's going to be a load of money coming in, but when you're talking about a ground that definitely needs a refurb, I'm not fussed about the training ground. You bring a player into the right atmosphere of something successful, they're not bothered about all this kind of singing and dancing, training grounds. All they're bothered about is what the team's going to achieve. So training ground, not a problem. The ground, I know it needs a change, as we know there's too many nooks and crannies in it, and the ground, especially the south stand, needs opening up now internally, totally opening up. But that's been deemed as a priority. So where does it come in with players? And they're the ones that everything comes through. What happens on the pitch is how you set a football club.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair. I'm optimistic because it feels like it's change of wind. But the point is really ultimately that we will only really know that sense of direction within 18 months. Do you know what I mean? You're not going to know it over 3 or 4 weeks. And really not even 6 months. You need just with any manager, you need to give that direction time. But we'll see. We'll see. We're going to be here to comment on it either way. A quick question from Patrick before we move on to Wigan and Spurs. He says, a question for you both. I'm scratching my head at our inability to keep meaningful possession of the ball. I'm not talking about the slow sideways passing between our centre backs. Why is this happening? Yeah, it is an interesting thing. I do. He's got another question. I'll come to that in a little bit. Sorry, Patrick, just deal with this one first because it's a great question. It is a frustrating thing to see United unable to really sort of dominate possession of the ball. And you do see them quite often with, over 50%, 60% sometimes against the smaller sides. But it is about meaningful possession. It's about what you're actually doing, penetrating and stuff like that. I don't know. I think the idea might be that you have not enough. Just 1 second while there's not enough complementary talents within the side, and I think you get to that point when you have got a squad that's been built by different managers and there's different talent levels, different ideals what those players have come into. I'm not giving an excuse to the manager. I'm talking about the complication of a squad direction where certain players aren't built to keep hold of the ball, or they just don't have the qualities. Like you were talking earlier about Scott McTominay, he's been tried in that defensive midfield role for nearly 4.5, 5 years, really, and anyone can see that he's not. And he's given it a fair go. He doesn't complain about it, but he's not built to screen a defence. He doesn't have those miserly capabilities that you need from a player in that kind of role. He doesn't have the economy of possession. But this is what you talk about, really, Patrick, is that economy of possession. And it's not always about having the ball, it's about using it smartly. And United don't seem to do either. Even when they've got lots of the ball, even when they don't have lots of the ball. Under Ollie, they were quite good at doing that. Using when they had little of the ball, they were quite good at being economic with it. We don't seem to do that either way with the moment. And I do personally believe it's probably more down to the disparity in certain qualities and complementary talents between, like you don't have two players who seem to have been bought to play alongside each other. Like we've had Wan-Bissaka next to Varane, next to Lindelof. We've had Martinez, Maguire, Shaw, Dallo on that side, Malacia, Reguilon, all these players who they've been brought in over different periods where it doesn't seem like, all right, we want a long-term vision for what we want to do as a team, but all of the complementary talents, like you wouldn't want to leave Maguire at sea and things like that. All of those things have to be taken into consideration when you're building partnerships, and I think that probably does come into our inability to make progressive passing moves up and down the pitch, because a lot of those players don't look like they've got the requisite talents to play alongside each other. Is that simplifying it, Paul? Is there something deeper there?
No, I think that's about it, really. And you hit the nail on the head when you've got players who have been signed by different managers to play in a different way or play to what they can do. And I think Ten Hag would love to be a little bit more possession based, but I still think he likes to counter attack as well. And it's always been United's strength. Always been, even, and I remember it best, obviously, because I played in it, with the goalkeeper could throw a football like people see a harpoon come out of a cannon. Um, and then he kind of carried on. Ollie lived off of it, playing that way. It worked so well for him, playing that counter-attacking way, especially away from home. But it comes to the point now that every now and again you do need to keep the ball in today's game. At all levels are doing it now. They want to do it. It's about the fine margins of when you overdo it. If United pass it too much, given the players they've got in the moment, they've got no creativity.
Mm.
They can't play slow. They haven't got the players who can break down the team. They just can't do it. Someone might come out and say Bruno, but the moment Bruno doesn't get what he wants after 15 seconds, then the toys come out.
Yeah.
He'll kick the ball everywhere. He'll try something. It
Yeah.
doesn't come off. Then he throw his arms in the air, blaming them, and he goes. So you need patient players who are disciplined to play in that manner, to play that way. And United, I think, have definitely got one in Mainu, without a shadow of a doubt. He can play that way. Um, Casemiro could play that way. Um, and I think that's the number two in there at this moment. And someone might come and say Ericsson. I don't want to be disrespectful to Ericsson, but I think Ericsson now he's got to the point now. I don't think he can play. I don't think that's his way of playing. I think he's struggling.
Yeah.
I think he's found a struggle. I don't know whether that's a club thing. I'm hoping it's a club thing. The way it's worked out, he isn't. He can't. He can't do or was expected. Always lost the edge a little bit because of the way the team's declined, and he's felt the backlash of that because he needs everyone around him to help him give his best, and he's struggling that way. You look at the wide players; they don't keep the ball. Don't keep the ball at all. The wide players. No self-discipline in their game. They instead of trying, if it, they don't use their heads. If it's one-on-one, space behind, you have to do it. Take them on, unless you see a better alternative. Someone's made a really good run. But if it's two-on-one to get their head up and to pass and move, they don't do it. None of the three do it. And none of the, and just to change it slightly, none of those three players, the three wide players, would get in another team in the top eight
Yeah.
of the Premier League. You know, that's where they are at this moment in time. They wouldn't do. And I'm saying top eight, but then I'm as well as Crystal Palace with their ones. Crystal Palace have got better wide players than Manchester United. But people go, oh, Jordan Ayew. I'll tell you what, you get more from Jordan Ayew than what you do from any Manchester United wide player. Because he's
Yeah.
quite clever in what he does. So United can't play a possession-based game because they haven't got enough players with the self-discipline to play in that manner and the creativity for something to make something happen. And that, well, let's just put it all into one pot. Too many selfish players at Manchester United at this given time. Players that have been better off playing tennis, golf, or gone fishing. They can be on their own and do what they want.
Yeah, it's Cantona's famous quote. He always used to say, I think he said that after the '94 Cup final, which is second most famous quote after the FA Cup final. Yours, said, I think I'll go and have a few pints, of course. You must have seen that video so many times. I love it.
It does pop up quite a few times, and so many people just sat there laughing. They said to me, "Why did you say that for?" And I kind of said, "Well, that was me. That was that time. Is that all of us were there? And what did we do when we got in the dressing room after we won? We sprung open a can of beer.
Yeah,
Because we just wanted, for me to play my first cup final and win as well. It was something that all that running around the back garden and wanting to be somebody,
yeah.
at 5:10 after a Saturday, it all came into fruition. It was a life thing, and everyone was the same. It was just to the fact of no one else has said it before me, so thank God for that, because God knows where I would have gone.
But you know what? You should have had a few pints after that one because that was the club's. People keep forgetting this. I'll not allow people to forget it. 30 years ago this year. 30 years ago this year. Where United won. Let's remind everyone they won for the first time ever 2 trophies in the first season. Incredible team, incredible achievement. That over this rest of the season, I'll drip feed a little bit more into that, especially if United keep in the cup, because you want to watch a Manchester United team play good football. You want to watch a Manchester United team play like a Manchester United team. Watch all the highlights of that team in that cup run. That's everything that a United team should be. Every single time they step onto the pitch. One question before we talk about this season's cup run. Johnny Crowther from Twitter, X. He says, question for Paul, one of our best ever right backs. Nicely greased for you there. Not Mr. Paul, but I think nice enough to allow it in. Or either Wan-Bissaka or Dalot the long-term solution.
If we're not going to go out, if it's not, I don't think it makes sense to go outside and just to go and get a right back, because you're talking by margins. But if there was a right back, you'd go and get who would liven things up, and you put him in the right team. You put him in with good people around him, because he's very, very honest. There's Walker Peters at Southampton.
Okay.
You go and get him because he can play in the final third. He can play in tight areas in opponents' boxes as well. You go to Southampton, and you speak to any Southampton fan, you say, who's Southampton's best player? I'll tell you what, if you go to 10 of them, 8 of them will say Walker Peters.
Really? Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, every time I see him play, what fullback?
Yeah.
Everything about him reminds me, he's got my kind of stature, everything the way he is, he's very tenacious, he moves around, but he's so much better than me with the football at his feet in the opponent's spec. So much, it's incredible.
No, not having that. Anyone who watched you play saw that goal against Reading, and not going to do it.
I've got to answer that question just quickly. I would go Wan-Bissaka because he's taken step forwards,
Yeah.
because he listens. Defensively, very rarely does he get beat, but there was one game, the Nottingham Forest game, he allowed the wide player. I think he got a little bit, made it too easy for him to go down the outside, and Wan-Bissaka lost a foot race and he allowed the ball to go into the box. But he didn't work it hard enough. But we know that's there in his game already. The bit where he's really worked is the fact of you get him in that opponent's bit and on that right end, he's really improved in going forward. He's definitely more comfortable with the ball at his feet in tight areas.
Yeah.
He's playing, he's putting people in, he's making different kind of runs into the box to get him better, difficult, more prominent crossing positions. He's a player who has stepped forward when he was under the microscope. He could have actually been one of those players everyone talked about in the same breath as maybe a Maguire in that sense, and maybe the wrong people, the Martials. But he didn't get involved in that. He just listened, learned, and got himself back in. Now he needs to play regularly. He needs games. I think Dallow's done well. Dallow's got too many mistakes in him. He's going to go and strike a ball well and maybe score some incredible goals from distance. But I don't think you can rely on him defensively because he has too many lapses.
Yeah, no, good. I agree completely. As I would, obviously, you know what you're talking about when it comes to playing right backs. But Wan-Bissaka has you. We are fair on this podcast, and like we'll look at a player and say, "Oh, that's that player. I'm not sure about their direction." We've done it with Lindelof. Wrote him off and congratulated him coming back in. Johnny says Wan-Bissaka brilliant one-on-one, just loses focus now again. Need to leave it alongside him yet because I have so many players in the team. In terms of needing a leader, and the team itself needs one. Okay, so Wigan tonight, the very nicely convenient time of 8:15 p.m., which is, I mean, Wigan's local to Manchester, and that kickoff time makes it difficult for local fans to get the train back. How can you schedule a kickoff time between Wigan and Manchester United that's so inconvenient to fans that it makes them difficult to get back? Do you know, it's mad. Anyway, I'm not going, so it's not affecting me. I watch it on TV with some fantastic commentary. I'm sure Joey Barton will be on there giving us all the benefit of his wisdom. I'm not going to talk about him. Good grief. Yeah, but Wigan tonight, obviously, their manager, Sean Maloney, Paul, was the scorer of the goal the last time Wigan beat Manchester United in 2012, which anyone listening to this or watching this needs reminding, and was a defeat that cost United the title really that season. This season, they don't look like they're going to move anywhere apart from the middle of League One. They had an 8-point deduction at the start of the season, which is it has got them in the lower part of the season, but this table. But they do look like they've pushed away from the relegation threat. They're fairly good at home, still not perfect at home, and fairly poor away. They've won at Exeter, they've won at York in the cup run so far without conceding a goal. But you really, I mean, I don't want to count my chickens with United, especially because they'll be looking at United's trip to Forest, which is a great fillip for them, a great sort of thing for them to learn from. That, you know, United, they only have to give them. I mean, they can make it difficult for United from the off. They can make it a trip that they don't want to have, and if United don't settle, they generally don't really find their way into a game. They don't want to be giving United the platform to play football in the early stages. But then again, Wigan hasn't really been a fortress in the way that Sean Maloney would have. You want, you know, if you're a home team, wanting a team to come, a Premier League team to come, you want your home ground to be kind of a fortress, and it hasn't really been that. Yeah, so what do you make of what's going to happen tonight?
Well, they're going to have a sellout. Their first sellout for quite a while. All their players are going to be lifted without even trying to manage. He hasn't got to say anything, the manager. His biggest problem is that he's going to have maybe a few disappointed players who actually wanted to start because they're thinking about making history. And he's going to be believing that there's going to be a few Manchester United players, and as Gibbs White says, who aren't going to want to be there.
Yeah.
He's got to start with as many the players who he knows have been in this situation before. So you would have a mainland playing who's played maybe played against Wigan and their likes for a lot of his youth football,
Yeah,
been in those games, knowing what he got from those players and those youth players playing against Manchester. You'd want Johnny Evans to be playing. You need Johnny Evans because he's going to be ugly a few times when that ball. They'd be looking to get the ball in the box, especially with a goalkeeper, as often as possible. And you're going to need someone like Johnny Evans just to lead everyone else.
yeah,
It's as simple as that. You're going to want to Wayne Bissaka, with his defending skills, because it's going to be a little bit touch and go sometimes. You'd expect that regardless if you're playing good, bad, or indifferent, being a Manchester United going to a Wigan. And then, because hopefully there's enough in midfield that they can have a fight, as the saying used to be before, and even Sir Alex used to say it, you have to win the battle before you can win the war. No one's going to respect you. No one's going to give you time with the ball. I would say to Fernandes as well, he's got to remember he's up against players. These players are actually playing to pay a mortgage, to maybe, hoping to appearance money, hoping to win a game that might maybe pay off a car when they've been a little bit over extravagant because they wanted a nice car. So it's their
yeah,
life they're playing for, these players. So every time he gets tackled, it's not a foul. It's people are a little bit hungry, being a little bit overzealous because they've got a passion and a drive to win a game of football, especially against Manchester United. And I think if the manager can get that across to them, or maybe let Steve McLaren earn a bit of money, or earn the right to be earning what he's earning, and actually speak to the players, because he's been around that division, he played in that division regularly for Hull City. So we should be able to put across to some of these players who don't understand it what it is, what it means to those players, and for them to understand it. And the fans know it, especially the fans, and there's enough United fans on that side as well. Um, so I'm just hoping there's not another embarrassment, to be perfectly honest. Really hoping, because if there is, this could be it for the manager, because the media will try their best to get him the sack,
yeah.
as they have been trying for a long, long time. They keep doing it because they want to start again, talking about Manchester United from post Fergie. They want to do that story all through again. So they're desperate for Ten Hag to go. So so it'll be interesting. It's going to be interesting. I don't really want to watch it, Wayne, to be perfectly honest. I really, really don't.
Are you going to?
I've got to. I've got to watch it because just the fact of at some point I'm going to be kind of have to ask my opinion about it. So I try not to miss any Manchester United games if I'm not working on them.
Yeah,
It's punishing. I can watch it and I can switch off. That's the difference. I was at West Ham and I wanted to switch off there, but you can't switch off a big stadium, can you, when you're sitting inside of it?
yeah,
But the West Ham one is quite interesting. Is that just going back to a slightly way? Is that you talked about the performance here and about how poor both teams were. It was the worst first half I've ever sat through in that stadium, and that
yeah.
was followed up by the worst 90 minutes when they played Brighton just recently. But I was sitting and I was working on that game, and after last season, when I always go there because, as you know, I know a lot of people there. It's my local team, and I see all my old school friends. I see everyone there, and I'm walking through, and I could feel when I'm walking through. Last season it was easier because United got beat, but there was more about them.
Yeah.
But they got beat, and there was always a little sarky comment as I'm walking through. All the little bits about you know me being a plastic cockney, everything like that coming through and walking through, and I could see everyone was staring at, was looking at me as I'm going down the escalators down, and they were looking at me. But I think they felt sorry for me this time around. That's what it was. It was like I walked in to see friends in one of the lounges, and I'm walking through. I could see people looking at me. Normally, people would say something to me. People didn't say anything to me because, as much as anything, and they've got that adage, haven't they, about what they say about United, love and hate them, or whatever. But I could see people, and everyone was. I think they were a little bit disillusioned. They couldn't believe what they saw. They were. A lot of people, I think, were in a way with near devastation. Yes, great. They were absolutely so proud of their team to win, to beat Manchester United after what they've achieved in recent in the games before. But they was a little bit couldn't believe what they're seeing. They saw a United side with no fight.
Yeah.
There was no malice between the fans. And they've
Yeah.
got a bit of West Ham that are right next to the away supporters, and all they do is stand up all game, just abusing the United fans in the lower tier and the upper tier. And it wasn't anything because the players never gave anything. They weren't no kicking out, big tackles, nothing at all. Went down for a whimper. Now, I'm hoping that doesn't happen in this game. As much as it's a bit like that kind of shape as what West Ham is, it hasn't got the running track round it, of course, but it's reasonably open inside that stadium in a certain way, I think, and if I can remember it rightly. But the fans are not right on top of you. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of new fans will come in there. Wigan. Sean Maloney knows it's going to be a full house. He's hoping some of his players don't get stage fright. But a lot of these players, this is where they could sell themselves or
Yeah.
go and do something for that net for maybe a big move for them, or
Yeah.
or to do something for a contract at the end of the season. So I hope they go there with their eyes wide open to what they're going into, because given United's form of late, they mostly believe that they can go and do something. The league position doesn't come into it.
Yeah.
For Wigan, where they are, they don't care. This is a one-off, and the manager team talk is going to be more about calming them down, not to go and do anything silly. Don't go and make a rash challenge and get yourself booked or maybe sent off. Do not go out there thinking you can win it and then get caught out on the counter, then you're chasing. It's about calming them down, Yvonne, because that is going to be the problem. Because of what
Yeah.
United have been doing of late, a lot of them will be believing that they can win the game.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll both be watching it then. And you better watch it because I'm going to quiz you about it like next week.
Okay.
So don't fall asleep before 10 o'clock. Which
You
incidentally,
never fall asleep watching horror shows, do you?
yeah, well, that's a great point. But yeah, I think, it does feel like we're stuck in that perennial cycle of will these players, when will the penny drop? What it means to represent Manchester United, and the penny. There've been so many times when the penny should have dropped over all of these years where they've seen what it means to teams to beat Manchester United. But like you said, now for West Ham, like they beat us so comfortably that doesn't have the same kind of feeling anymore. For Wigan, it will. It will. If they do. And I think the thing that tells us most about Manchester United at the moment is that we're not going there. We're going there expecting that he'll play the strongest side and still not 100% confident that we'll see either a win or a good performance. But we'll be back next week to talk about them and the Spurs game as well. Not previewing that today, but you don't know what you're going to get after one game to the next, so it makes no sense previewing one before we've seen United play at Wigan. Hopefully Dave will be back next week, maybe not. I think, I don't know, I'll talk to him about it. But we will be back, Paul and I will be back to talk about United's games against Wigan and Spurs. Until then, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, if you can give us a nice review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you're listening on, or if you can drop a comment below, we reply to all comments after the show as well. So yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and stay well, guys. Take care.